like to say that the topic I've chosen is going to be a bit light on jokes, so if you like to shout flapjacks at me to introduce an element of physical comedy.
Women's mental health.
Right, I'm just going to read this out really fast, which I know isn't good form, but I have a lot of words. The villagers of Ambridge are a fortunate lot. Employment rates seem high, poverty rates seem low, and there appears to be something in the water, or perhaps the baked goods, which keeps everyone healthy well into old age and ensures quick recovery from conditions such as juvenile arthritis, epilepsy, and even flail chest. Some storylines have explicitly covered mental health issues, for example, those around Mike, Pat, Helen, and other characters might be susceptible to armchair diagnosis, perhaps Shula and Alistair. However, mental health problems remain unrepresented in Ambridge in terms of overall numbers, and specific conditions such as bipolar disorder, schizophrenia, and OCD are not represented at all, because none of the characters are shown managing a chronic mental health problem, whether successfully or otherwise. Of course, if 1 in 4 of the characters were portrayed as being mentally ill in some way the whole time, it would make for a realistic programme, but also a repetitive and rather miserable one. Gosh. Centering a storyline on a particular circumstance or health condition, as was done so well in Jack's dementia storyline, can educate and inform listeners. However, The Archers has characters whose lives move in real time, and who we get to know, like, if not friends, perhaps familiar acquaintances. And these characters can give us some idea of what it might be like to go through the same thing. If we hear something we've gone through ourselves, that can be a cathartic and important experience. Terry Malloy, who plays Mike Tucker, once spoke of a listener who had told him about Mike's storyline. It was like therapy for him to listen and to realise that he wasn't alone in going through it, he said. These stories do have a real effect on people out there. Mental illness is much more frequently diagnosed in women and can be bound up with roles conventionally played by women in society, such as motherhood and caring. This has been reflected on The Archers. When Pat was recovering from her depression after the death of John, for example, she stated that she felt like a mother again, and Helen recovered from her first minor relapse into anorexia on hearing that the child she was carrying was small for dates. It is in fact Helen I want to focus on in particular, both to follow on from my paper last year and to highlight what I see as a major deficiency in her storyline. And I'll just say it now, Rob. Good, so we can get that out of the way. The storyline about Rob's emotional abuse of Helen was called Traumatic, Brave and Controversial in the foreword of a certain very important book published last year. It is hard not to focus on Helen when discussing the representation of mental illness in Ambridge, because she's had several bouts of anorexia and suffered sustained abuse at the hands of her ex-husband, Rob. Rob and his mother, Ursula, took advantage of her vulnerability, as described by Amber Medland in the following passage of her chapter of the book. In weaponising cooking and eating as a mode of control, Rob's approach goes Helen back towards anorexia. After the first time Helen collapses, Rob says, "You haven't been eating properly, have you?" Helen replies that she's not been hungry. Rob insists that's just a story you've been telling yourself, force-feeding her his own paranoid narrative. It is not just outward subservience Rob wants, but narrative control. In refusing to eat, Helen finds a way to refuse Rob's appetite. In denying her need for nourishment, she finds a way to defy his desire for satisfaction. Not eating can be a form of passive resistance. Helen's eating disorder thus serves an important narrative function, but the more her illness is used as a storytelling or symbolic device, the more the realism of its portrayal is undercut, and the less the storyline can serve as a point of identification for fellow sufferers. The average duration of an eating disorder is about 5 years for anorexia, 8 for bulimia, and in each case fewer than half of sufferers will ever fully recover. I would venture to suggest that stabbing your abuser is not a complete or immediate cure, either for anorexia or for any of the after effects of domestic abuse. It's unbelievable. When I carried out a survey of listener opinions, 85% of the respondents thought that wasn't a good way, by the way, thought that the after effects of domestic abuse had not been properly represented in Helen's case, and 91% thought that they had not been realistically portrayed in Henry's character. Serious abuse on the scale perpetrated by Rob tends to leave its marks on its victims, in this case both Helen and Henry. Research by Savrusis and others concludes that even being a witness to domestic abuse, let alone being a primary target of it, creates post-traumatic stress symptoms even, which permanently change the physiology and anatomy of children's brains. This can have serious effects throughout the whole of their lives, affecting their cognitive abilities, emotions, personality, and the likelihood of suffering mental illness. The fact that Helen and Henry seem to have recovered so quickly and easily after the disappearance of Rob removes the significance and impact of the abuse they suffered, and could even imply some weakness or deficiency in the real-life victims who remain permanently marked by their experiences. It would be laudable for the programme, therefore, to continue to depict the devastation wrought by coercive and controlling abuse and of mental illness more generally, reinforcing the gravity of what Rob did, and giving a voice to those strong women who continue to deal with abuse long after it ends. Thank you.